So, Nick, tell me a little bit about yourself as a coach.
Well, I started out coaching as most coaches do, I think, in dating coaching in 2009. I don't know why we all end up there first, but it seems to be the way of it. And from there, I've kind of migrated my practice over the years to now working with people pleasers as they identify in kind of all walks of life through my coursework. And then my one-on-one practice is generally speaking with CEOs, doctors, lawyers, people that have really kind of made it to the upper strata of their professional careers and are recognizing this pleasing behavior is becoming a detriment to their growth.
I didn't know that you started as a dating coach, but I think that that's such a common thing. I personally did not, but tell me a little bit more about what that looked like for you.
So in 2000, I guess this was 2010, maybe 2009. It's hard to keep track, but back, before Vietnam, I was getting divorced. I was 30, and I had this kind of crazy belief system in my mind that I didn't know how to meet women anymore, and I didn't want to be alone forever. So I went about the task of learning how to do that academically, which led me into the pickup artist world, which we now know as Red Pill. And I became very adept at it. I was very good at being a pickup artist. I've always been a very good teacher of things like that. And, I've been in sales training and motivation most of my life as well. And so it was kind of a natural fit for me in that way because I've always done the kind of coaching and development thing. But what happened was, I was, um, so I've been in sales my whole life. And what I started to recognize was there was this old company I used to work with called Norvergence. And what they had done was they had an entirely scripted sales approach. But they had one of the fastest growing telecommunications companies in the country. And the reason that was is because the sales pitch was dialed in. Everybody knew what to say. We had all of the objections were like handled. We had all of the rebuttals like memorized. Like everything was a memorization strategy. And then when I started to look at how pickup functioned, I was like, oh God, we're not teaching men how to be confident. We're teaching them how to sell penis. And I felt like that was a violation of my integrity when I realized what we were doing because I thought we were helping people, right? But what would happen is these guys would get into these relationships and then they would implode because they weren't able to handle, the relational strategy. They couldn't. There was no after effect of like, okay, well now I've got this girl. What do I do with her? And so I started to really hate that world. I think I was probably one of the first out. I was one of the last in and the first out. And I'd been working with Neil Strauss and I'd done some work with Mystery and Mehow and some of the, kind of the old names in that world. And so I decided to eject and teach men how to be confident, not teach them how to fake confidence, but how to actually be confident. And what I did was went to the Coach Training Institute and started and figured out how to be an actual coach. And then from that, I started to really read on things like Alfred Adler and Viktor Frankl, and really started to program through my practice. What does it look like to overcome limiting beliefs and fear? And that led me back into the sales world, incidentally. So I ended up going back into sales coaching development with a company called Phobia that I founded. And what we did was we took the top 20% of sales guys. This is how I exited. We took the top 20% of sales guys and we would do this workshop called Phobia. And it was to help them overcome fears and limiting beliefs and be more present rather than professional, which was such a powerful tool, right? And so what we would see is this weird acceleration in timeline. So it was really kind of a master stroke in marketing because if I can take the top 20% of sales guys in any organization and I can raise them by 2%, the top line revenue goes up exponentially faster because they're 80% of the production anyway, right? So I was able to see like top line raises in 10 and 20% in the first 2 and 3 months that they would get out of that course because we would help them with this. And then I was like, wow, what a powerful tool. Well, I was married to my third wife at the time because marriage is not my forte, turns out. And I'm good at attracting. I'm actually pretty good at marriage. It's just I didn't know who I was. But I was married to my third wife at the time, and some things in my life started to fall apart. And so I left that coaching company in the hands of two very capable men, one of which is now still a mentor of mine, and ended up founding a bike bar company. I don't know if you know what a bike bar is. It looks like it's called a pedal tavern. It looks like a 10-passenger bicycle that you drink on.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I used to own 3 of those in Denver. Now,
Okay.
turns out I have a very addictive personality. And when I'm in front of bars all day, what am I going to do? So I ended up drinking myself silly, ended up divorced again, ended up having to give that company away back to the founder, to the guy who helped me found it. And then that dropped me into rehab in 2018. And that's when I rediscovered my love of coaching. I was in a rehab center, and I started to see this big gap in addiction treatment where we would teach them how to use I statements, and we would, and like all the kind of menial garbage that you learn when you're trying to just basically it was a place to go and safely get sober, and they had to have programs so the state would pay them, right? But I went to the owner of that place, and said, hey, I see a real gap in our recovery protocol, and I want to fill it. And she was like, how would you do that? I said, well, I developed a workshop years ago that I think I could retool and plug and play here for your kind of for the people that are like 2 or 3 weeks into the program. They can come down and be in my room, and then I will coach them in the same way. And so that work was one of my favorite times of my life, especially as a coach. And I love what I do now. Like, I have great clients, and I get to fly all over the country and sometimes all over the world. And like, I have a really cool life, but um, the impact that high level coaching was able to have on people that would have never been exposed to it otherwise was really profound to me. So I have people that will call me still and say, hey, I'm sober because of you. And it's been 7 years. Like, they'll call me and go, I still remember the questions. I still remember quoting you. I still talk about the things we did in that group in my other recovery classes and stuff. And I'm like, wow, it speaks to the heart of why I do it, which is I truly love to see people accelerate. I love the light bulb, when they're like, and you're like, oh shit, you get it. Like, you see it.
Yeah.
And I've been really blessed to be able to do that a lot.
Man, you just told a hell of a story there, and I don't know which part to pick to move forward is the problem.
Right.
So
This is
let's
this is what
just,
happens with everybody.
no, it's all good. So I'm choosing this bit because it's a piece of my own history that I haven't spoken about publicly on my social media yet. And that's I quit drinking 8 years ago. And I
Wow.
found a lot of power in that. Just, man, I was absolutely miserable. I actually quit drinking for gut health reasons
Mm,
because, like, I was drinking every day and I knew that was a problem, but that alone
sure.
wasn't enough.
Right.
I have really bad gut issues, and just between the two, I couldn't function anymore.
Mm,
And I absolutely could have used some coaching back then. Let me tell you, that was the first phase of my self-development. So I know I've seen a little bit that you talk about your two main things are coaching people out of people pleasing and
mhm.
alcoholism. Do you still do a little bit on that front or?
I don't do as much in the recovery world anymore.
Okay.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to tell you why.
Yeah.
I couldn't lose any more people.
Yeah.
Um, Shit, I've never said that. It was killing me because as many people as I would help, and there were more of those than would die. Um, you know, I grew to love the people that I helped, and even still, I keep losing them. Like, even now, and I just couldn't add any more to that. I couldn't add any more to that coffer, knowing that an ex girlfriend of mine, Danny, just recently passed away, and I couldn't in good conscience do that to my inner child anymore. And so I don't really do much in the recovery space. In fact, most of the time when people call me and they want help with recovery, I refer them to a rehab center, and say, look, let's get you a year clean. Let's get you to where you're stable, and then it's a good time to talk to me. Um, but what I have found is that recovery and people pleasing tend to run the same timeline. So that's been interesting. So I do feel like in some way, so a lot of my clients will quit drinking on accident. Like, they don't have a problem, but like we'll do enough work that by the time we meet the second time in person, they're like, yeah, we could just go out and get some like near beers or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like, because initially, you get together with the people displeaser and they kind of want to party and like they want to have a good time. We want to get to know each other and all those things. But usually by the second one, what happens is it's more of like a long walk on the beach for 2 days where we really talk about like what is the strategy going forward. And I think I see them shift pretty quickly from seeking that external validation to really internalizing, okay, who am I and what do I want?
When you're developing your coaching practice, there's a lot to be said for self-preservation.
Oh my
You
God.
need to know who you can and cannot help, both from like an ethical, moral standpoint, right? But also just
Sure.
from this place of self, like you're talking about. Like we all have our own demons to bear, and we need to
Mm-hmm.
know what we are and aren't willing to take on and drawing that line in the sand. It sounds like you've got a good handle on it of like, let's get you a year clean. You've got good boundaries. The people displeaser has good
It's
boundaries. How shocked are
like
we?
an like I know what I'm doing. I think when you start a business, if I said this, Chris Williamson, I got to get on his podcast, which by the way, I hope anybody who ever listens to him, I hope you get to go on there because it was a really cool experience.
Yeah,
But he and I talked a lot about how entrepreneurship is basically like looking into a 5-year timeline where you're going to continue to eat glass every day. And it's like I'm just constantly chewing
yep.
glass and my mouth is bleeding and I'm tired and like I'm always wondering what's going to happen next. And without good boundaries, none of this is possible. And to that point, though, where I find a lot of my more affluent clientele is that they are boundaryless, but they have figured out how to make that work for them in the career sphere, and then everything else is falling apart.
Yep.
Yep.
That's
So
a rewind to me just a handful of years ago, top of my game in oil and gas, managing a team of 53, exceptional at work, home life, everything else,
right,
non-functioning.
right, right. Every day you go home and you're like, I would like to start a shotgun. Yeah, I know that feeling. That was me when I was in finance. I was a very successful mortgage banker. I was the vice president of the West Coast operations for a very big company when I was 25, and um, I've done very well in corporate America. The problem is that the cost was too high, and I didn't. I think I probably had I known had I had a good coach like me, I might have been able to stay with it. I don't know that I would have. Because I wouldn't be here today. But Shakespeare said it best. It may not have been Shakespeare. It might have been, I think it might have been somebody else. But to thine own self be true. And I've tried to live that way through the last 8 years. And I think it's been really helpful.
Me being in the early phases of just where I'm at, it's a little bit of finding that balance of what flavor of glass do I want to eat for the next 5 years. Like, I already had a job where I worked myself to death and I was miserable, and I know what that looks
Mm-hmm.
like, and I know how to be successful there. So I don't need to
Sure.
do that all over again, right? And I understand that I'm going to have hardship and pain as I move forward, but what type of hardship do I actually want to endure? Building my life around that sort of a strategy, right?
It's funny you say that. I just wrote a video today that I really like, and my content's performing like shit right now. I don't know what's going on with Facebook and Instagram, but like every one of mine I know in this space is like, what the hell is happening? But I wrote this piece today about how a good life and a bad life both require high amounts of suffering. And if you're going to bleed anyway, you may as well choose what to bleed about. Right. And I think way too many people bleed for the wrong things. You know, like I also likened, I made some doozies today. One of them asked the question or begged the question, what if you withdrew all of the energy that you've put in to your stock exchange of excuses and started to focus on what's next? And to the point of entrepreneurship, the answer to your question, what glass do I chew, is yes,
Yeah.
right? Chris was very nice to me, and he was talking to me about exit velocity, and I thought I was already there. And he's like, no, you got 5 more years, buddy. Yeah, I think there's a lot to it. So if I was to give you advice on that, I would, and if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening, just eat the glass. It's going to be whatever glass is in front of you. Don't try to be picky. Just chew the glass. Right now, you're in the phase of life that you have to do everything, and I'm still doing quite a lot. I mean, I have Valerie, my assistant. She does all my calendar and stuff, but you know, I do almost everything still.
For people that don't know you, you're out recording content every day, you're coaching clients, you still have boot camps going on. So let's talk a little bit more about your practice as it currently sits. When did you develop the People Displeaser, and what has that looked like getting you to where you're at today?
So the moniker "the People Displeaser" came about on accident. So I was coaching a very good friend of mine. I need to actually reach out to him. His name is Marcus, and he and I had joined this one of those coaching incubator programs. It's like Preston Smiles, how to start a coaching company in 10 days or less, or whatever the hell it was. And it was like an 8-week program, and really, I got two things out of it. I learned to make content, and they gave me a pretty ironclad contract, which has been really helpful over the last 5 years or so. He and I were talking one day on the phone, and I was pissed off at this course because it was garbage. It was really expensive. It was like half the money I had when I bought it, and I really needed it to be something, right? Um, and it wasn't. So Marcus and I were on the phone one day. I was just pissed. He's like, you know what you should do? Because one of the assignments was like, make a video and tag us in it. And at the end, I went, to the very end, I was like, hope this helps. So that all turned out to be this thing that I do was actually like a fuck you to Preston Smiles. And then he was like, it's such displeasing content. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to change my name to People Displeaser. And then I did. And then the next thing I know, 5 years later, I've got 1 million followers. I'm like, oh God, now I'm stuck with this forever. Could have just left it Nick Pollard, but no, I had to be quirky.
When an accident becomes your tagline, I don't know if you've ever seen the story of like John Cena, but the whole "you can't see me" was supposed to be a joke that he did
Okay.
one time. As you're figuring out your branding, be careful with the
Mm-hmm.
jokes that you make because one of them's gonna stick.
Yep, yep, and it did, and I'm glad it did. Um, it's taken me a lot of very cool places.
So we've talked a little bit, but you've done this Preston Smile course, you've done the CTI certification program. Like, what do you do? What have you done to educate yourself, and what will you continue to do along that path?
So I read a lot. I read about, I don't know, I probably read 2 books a month. I'd love to be the guy who reads 52 books a year, but I'm not. And I also not, I'm a really great absorber of knowledge, but I'm not a great reader because my ADD just kicks my ass every time. So I listen to audiobooks very, very well. But I've recently stumbled into this idea that I'm going to pick my top 7 favorite books, and I'm going to dig into them every year for 5 years. So I'm going to spend a month on my top 7 books every year and really dive into the knowledge and really try to absorb it in a more meaningful and just way, because there's some really incredible work out there that people just don't pay attention to anymore. And we've gotten into a societal loop where every next book is the right thing to read. So I read Good Habit, Bad Habit, and then I read Atomic Habits. Hey, little known secret, they're the same book as the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So like they're all the same book, right?
Right.
It's written differently and they have different voices, but for the most part, it's my publishing agent, Roger Freet, God rest his soul, he just passed away 5 weeks ago or so, said that there is only one personal growth book, and we've all just been rewriting iterations of it. And so what I'm really interested in now is I've become very, very interested in Alfred Adler. And so I found that through a book called The Courage to be Disliked, and then The Courage to be Happy, which is a great series. If you haven't read them, I highly recommend it. Um, and so I've really exposed myself to that. So I think I'm probably going to spend the next few years really studying Adler, and really getting to understand his philosophy and how he worked with people, because I think it's really powerful. It is not the denial of trauma so much as the statement that trauma doesn't actually exist.
Damn.
And it's just really powerful stuff. It's just, what a cool narrative too, right? Like if you think about
Yeah.
that, your trauma only exists through the eyes that you see it with now, right?
Talk about a powerful reframe.
If you look at, like, so in Hermosi talks about this, he's like, all right, so a 45-year-old man marries a 15-year-old girl. Disgusting, traumatic, right? But that was commonplace 35 centuries ago, right? Like back in, the even as early, even as recent as 1700s and probably beyond, older guys were marrying younger women because that's just how it worked. And now we call that trauma. I'm not a proponent of that, but that's the deal, right? So when I read this book, when I started to really understand Adler's philosophy, I'm like, oh wow, that's really what I've been talking about anyway. Like, I've been saying this crap forever anyway. I may as well learn from the guy who created the idea. I just didn't know that it was actually out there. Turns out I'm not that original.
There's not that many original ideas left to be had these days, but
Sure.
the way that I speak about it is way oversimplified, but just radical accountability of
Yeah.
everything that happens to you isn't your fault, but it's your problem. Like, how are you going to accept it? How are you going to deal with it? How are you going to move on from it? How can you take ownership of this narrative and look at it a different way?
So the psychological principle that Adler talks about is, it's a three-walled triangle, and on one side it's written "poor me," and on one side it's written "that bad person," right? And then on the other side, the final side, so you pick it, like you can always see it's either "poor me" or "that bad guy," right? That bad person. Somebody did something to me, or "poor me." But the final side is, once you get through those two, you move to, what do I do now? Right? What do I do now? And I come from a childhood of pretty gnarly SA for the platforms, because we don't need we don't need to get shadow banned or whatever. But I come from a pretty awful pedophilia background, and I let it define me for a lot of years. And that's really where the drinking came from, and that's where the fails in my life came from, and the bad marriages, and all the people pleasing was probably a result of that in some regard as well, I'm sure. And I was in a I was in a rehab center. This was, shit, I guess it was 2018. And if anybody needs to go to rehab, the New Beginnings Recovery Center in Denver is top notch. They're great, and they're reasonably priced. They're not paying me to plug them, by the way. But Chris Brewer, who's the chief operations officer, one day came up to me and he goes, "Are you gonna heal, or are you just gonna keep being a piece of shit?" And I was like, "God damn, man." And he goes, "I mean, but like, look at what you've been able to create, even in spite of all this. Like, you've had three great careers, you've owned companies, you've done really cool stuff, and that's what you were dealing with. Imagine if you just let it go, right? If you just said, you know what, no more. You forgive and you walk away. And forgiveness isn't forgetfulness. It's the idea of saying, I will absorb that. I am required to absorb that. I don't have a choice." And it's a life-changing conversation.
I just want to let that one air out a minute because there's a lot of depth to be had there. It's owning that narrative regardless of what it is, especially as you get later and later into adulthood. The things that happen to you as a child do have a lot of power. There's a lot to be said there. But are you going to let your life be defined as to what happened 10 or 20 years ago, or what you have created since then? How much of that narrative do you want to own? How much of that narrative do you want to focus on? And
Sure.
for me, the piece that I'm still rewriting is like the fact that I'm shy, which if you have met me as an adult, I'm fucking not. But the pieces of identity that we continue to hold on to, that we continue to choose, when can you let go of that? When can you hold on to that and move forward regardless, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting you say that the pieces of our childhood that, like I've just spoken about, they can define your future if you allow them.
Right.
And so Freudian psychology tends to look at everything on a singular through line. So it looks at trauma as very linear. So like this happened, so this is why you are the way you are. Where Adler tends to, so his theory loosely is that you act the way you act because it serves a goal, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Right? And when you realize that, like, oh God, what's the goal? Right? What is the goal of people pleasing? What is the goal of self sabotage? Like, what is the goal I'm trying to achieve? And that could be anything, but it's almost never good if it's happening in a subconscious relay. It's never good in my experience. And so when you decide, like, I'm going to live with intent rather than default, you can start to say, really going back to that original statement of like, okay, what now? I did a video years ago. I should repost it eventually here, but it was the phrase that changed my life. And that phrase was, so what? Right? Childhood trauma, PTSD, CPTSD, ADHD, I'm neurodivergent, so what? Am I going to let those things choose to define me, or am I going to choose to thrive? Right? And boy, people hated that video. Because people don't like accountability, man. They just don't.
Radical accountability trumps all, man. You have to
Right?
own it. It's up to you. You get to decide how you want to live, but you have to decide how you want to live.
Right.
And you will be miserable as long as you let the world continue to make those decisions for you.
And there's also another component to that. It's like you get to decide the way you want to live, but that doesn't mean it's going to work.
Right.
Another danger in that is outcome-based thinking. And I've been struggling with that recently. The journey that I'm on right now with Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, I mean, you're going through it too. Like, for some reason, personal growth has been deprioritized, and
Yep.
and it's happening kind of across the board, unless you're a mega influencer. That's okay. I've been through this before, but I was really heavily focused on these vanity metrics of like, why is anybody watching my stuff? And I'm not getting any clicks or follows. And I'm like, why am I trying? Then I asked myself, I was walking today. So by the way, I make my videos, I make them to myself. I'm not making them to anyone else. I love that people love my shit, but like, I'm making them about me. And the struggle I've been having is like, I'm faced with this idea of, well, am I doing this because I want to get likes and follows and get famous? Or am I doing this because it helps people? And even if one person sees it and it changes the way that they show up, even for a minute, that's worth it to me. So it was a really hard moment I had today when I was recording. It was like, if I keep focusing on the outcome, I'm focusing on everything that is outside of my control. And this is the interesting thing about outcome is like action, then timing, then people, then chaos, then downstream is the outcome. Right? So action is like I put the boat in the river, right? And then timing is like how long is it going to take me to get to the end of this part of the river? And then the people is like, well, who else do I need to help me navigate these rapids? And then you hit the chaos, which is the rapid, right? And I think too many people don't realize that the rapids are coming. Like, they're unavoidable. And you have to surround yourself in some meaningful way with one or two buddies. You know, Joey D says this all the time. You give me 3 motherfuckers and I can take over a country. And I think when you realize that you can't control the people and the places and the chaos, and you just let that be real, then you're in better position, in my estimation anyway, to be in control of what you're truly in control of, which is the action, right? And I think I got hung up in the outcome. So one of the things I did, and you'll love this, is that I was sitting at my desk. I'm like, my content's not performing. And I looked at my content. I looked at my content metrics, and I'm like, well, yeah, dipshit, you're only putting out one reel a day,
Yeah.
right? That needs to be 3 a day. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe that explains it, right? So I started putting out more reels, and they're not getting hits yet, but the algorithm's relearning me, right? It's trying to figure out who I am now, and I've changed. And because I've done all this other stuff, the world isn't ready to catch up to me yet, right? And I think this is something that's really important in personal growth that people also don't realize. Like, just because you're willing to change, just because you're ready, doesn't mean everybody else is ready for you to do that.
Yeah.
Right? You start setting boundaries, and people are like, well, yeah, what did you think they were going to do? Like, you've been living a certain way forever, and you think they're just going to be super happy that you're not going to give them your time or your money or your energy anymore? No, they're going to be mad. And that's fine. Just let them be mad.
I was actually just talking about this the other day with a buddy of mine, and it's really dependent on the relationship and how long that person has known you. If you have
Mm.
given them 20 years of data saying that you're going to do whatever the fuck they say, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
believe that. And if you come out and you try to make a
Yep.
change on day one, they don't give a shit because they've got 20 years of data, even if it's just a year or 2 years or 5 years, whether it's a friend, a
Sure.
coworker, a family member. If you've been behaving the way that you've been behaving for a long time, when you initially make that change, it's going to take a long time for them to rewrite the narrative in their own mind because they have so much information saying otherwise.
I hadn't thought of it this way, and I'm really glad you brought it up that way, because it's belief systems go both ways,
Yeah.
right? And so our belief systems create our environment, because so our beliefs are what is the, kind of the scaffolding on which your self-image is built, right?
Yeah.
And so your beliefs drive that self-image drives your actions drive your behaviors create your environment, right? But other people, what they believe about you is also in that vein. Now, you can't control for that, and you can't optimize for that. They are not used to you showing up in a way that says, I love me,
Yeah.
right? They're used to me showing up in a way that says, I'll do anything to make you love me,
Yeah.
right? And it's never like, I love you. And that's the interesting thing about this people pleaser set, is it's not about I love you. It's about please love me. And that's why it's so toxic.
My self-development journey actually started with the classic Mark Manson, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that he talks about it was there's two kinds of toxic people. And there's the people who go out and they start fires all over the world and they talk about how that it's everything is happening to them. And then there's the people who go out and put out those fires for them, take care
Mm-hmm.
of those problems and take them on. And man, was that just a, oh shit, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just as toxic as the other people because I've been out trying to save the world and it's my own fault that I've been ignoring all of my own problems for everyone else's.
Right. Right. You've gotten to a place
Damn.
where you're like, shit.
Yeah. Yep. So I want
Um,
to circle back to you read a shitload and you're going to focus on 7 books a year. And I just want to
mhm.
throw out there that as somebody who's also read a lot, man, you get into that space of reading all the self-development novels and all of this and all of that. And yeah, 70% of the content of all these books is exactly the fucking same. And the
Mhm.
30% is the author's take. I personally find a lot of interest in that individual 30%. That's just the way my brain works. I love that of like,
Sure.
how did David Goggins, who's batshit, come to the same realizations as Jay Shetty, and their books are almost the same but entirely different backgrounds.
Right. Like, how did Eckhart Tolle and David Goggins end up at the same location, right? Like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. So I agree with that. So I want to stress, I'm not going to stop reading. I just
Yeah,
really want to spend a month on each one of my favorite titles. So my first favorite of all time is The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. If you haven't read that one, I mean, damn it, it's good. It's brutal, but it's really good. I'll probably throw in. So the subtle art will probably go in there because I really love Mark's take on that. The book I'll read the most in the next year is probably my own because I'm going to have to read it 7,000 times to get it past my editor. So there's that. But I would say that probably The Courage to Be Disliked and The Courage to Be Happy are probably the top two books in my life right now. And so I think you should have a wide breadth of reading. I think guys like you and I tend to get like hyper focused on personal growth.
Yeah.
So I read every year. I read a cheesy sex novel, like 50 Shades or something like that. I read one every year because I like to remind myself how the minds of women work. And then every other book, I put in a nonfiction or a fiction. So, like, and my favorite author, by the way, is Kurt Vonnegut. I think I've read his entire canon. I've read all of it. So I'm probably going to deviate this year and maybe read a little less Vonnegut. Um, but I love the idea that isn't always about doing it in the tactical sense.
Yeah.
I think there's too many people don't realize that reading is good for your soul, and it not only enhances and expands your mind, but when you can get lost in a book, there's just something to it. I forget which book it is. It's one of Vonnegut's where the guy comes back from a black hole every year to see his wife or something, and I forget. I think it might be Sirens or Titans, but he has this dog named Kazakh, and he's this giant dog, and I don't know what kind of dog this is, but I can see it right when I read that book. And I think people need to do more playing.
Yeah. Cycling that back around to the eating the broken glass of, man, you're going to be out here and you're going through it. And one of my fundamentals I put in my pocket from Tim Ferriss's lifestyle design. You're going to build the life that you want to live. So figure out what that is. And for me, like I'm currently in Vietnam and I own a motorcycle and some fire props in Thailand that I am dying to get back to because for me, riding a motorcycle through the mountains is spiritual, man. Like
Nice.
I'm from North Dakota where the roads are straight and flat. So to ride a
Sure.
curve lights me up like nothing else. And to be able to spin fire and just get out there, and that's my form of art, man. And just to get lost in that moment, like you've got to build a life where you have playfulness, where you have creativity, where you have those things that you can get lost in, because otherwise you're just chewing glass 24/7, and man, that sucks. That's too much.
It really is. I did it the way you're doing it. I don't know if I ever told you that, but I traveled the world for 2.5 years starting my company because that's all I could afford to do. I couldn't live in the United States. It was too fucking expensive. So, and this was right after COVID. So the only thing that was open was South America, Central and South America. I spent 3 months in Thailand. I learned, or not Thailand, in Argentina, and I learned to tango. And I spent 6 months in Panama where I learned to actually surf. And I saw amazing things and I ate amazing food and I had amazing friends. And, I think that's where I developed the idea of play again. Was, if somebody asks me like, why am I miserable? I'll ask them like, when was the last time you went on a play date? Like, when was the last time you were playful?
Right.
When was the last time you had an experience just for an experience sake? When was the last time you went to the ice cream parlor and ordered something you didn't usually order? And then if you didn't like it, you just order what you usually order. Right? Like I think we get really stuck in our decisions, up to and including shit like ice cream. Like if you don't like something, send it back. And like people say, when life gives you lemonade, make lemons. Just hand them back. Like I don't fucking feel like making lemonade. I'm gonna make something else. I'm gonna go kill a cow and make steak. Okay, like that's what I'm gonna do instead. And I don't know. I think even this for me, I think podcasts are playful for me. They're fun for me. Coaching is Podcasting doesn't feel like business to me. It feels like just a really cool conversation. I love doing this shit.
Yeah. For me, that's actually, let's just come out and say this. You are part of the reason I started my podcast.
Really?
I had was writing a workshop on boundaries, and a friend of mine sent me your Chris Willis episode, and he's like, "Hey man, if you're working on boundary stuff, you should really just check this out." So Ethan, thank you. I'll send you to this
Thanks,
when
Ethan.
it's all done. Thanks, Ethan. So he sent me this. And I had been teaching a workshop on exploring intrinsic values and just how to live your life in alignment and doing a bunch of other stuff. And as I was leaving that space and I wasn't going to be able to host the workshop all the time, it's like, do I travel to somewhere else where I'll be able to host workshops full time? And it was, all right, check-in point. What are my long-term goals? My long-term goals are to get into like public speaking, and I wanted to speak to Mark Manson, Chris Willis, Jay Shetty, Alex Hermosi.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, well, is uh, teaching workshops every week going to drive me towards that? Or is speaking on podcasts going to drive me towards that? Probably speaking on podcasts. Like, all right, well, if every coach I know is looking to speak on a podcast, do I want to fist fight everybody else for airtime, or do I want to create that airtime?
Right.
Fast forward, here we are, created the airtime, and here you are today.
What episode am I?
You are I have like 6 released,
Nice.
and then I think that I have like about another 4 unreleased. I'm ramping up right now to, I've been dropping 1 episode a week, and I'm soon gonna go to 2 episodes a week. So we're just in that little bit of a building phase right now.
Sure. Nice. That's awesome, man. Um, it's hard fucking work, man. You know, being a content creator it's a fun job, but it's still a job. Um,
Absolutely.
and like tomorrow, I'm getting up at 6 a.m.
Yep.
I'm doing a coaching session with a friend of mine on the beach.
Yep.
And then I will record content, no bullshit, from 9 in the morning, probably until 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And my goal is to get out so much content, to have so much built tomorrow that I don't have to record again for another month. So I'm going to try and put out 60 pieces of content tomorrow.
Yep.
That's so much content.
That's so much fucking content.
Right? And then I got to edit it and I got to do all this crap to it, right? So like when you really think about, I think people don't realize this job is hard. I think they think we just make, so every video takes me about 15 minutes to edit. So if I do 60,
Yep.
you know,
Nick, can I ask
that's
you one
a
question?
week worth of work. Yeah, go ahead.
Why the fuck don't you pay someone to edit your content?
I probably will on this round. I probably will on this round. I think that's probably a smart move. I don't know. I guess you know what? Man, fuck you. You're right. I hate it when somebody asks me a question that I know the answer is right. Like, God damn it. It wouldn't cost me anything either. It probably cost me $500 a month to just, because I don't have any like real hard edits. It's like, just take out the dummy words and get rid of the silent parts. Like,
Yep.
Put in the caption, put in the thing, send it back to me, or schedule it, and it'll be fine. Right? So, yeah, you're right.
And I mean, do what you feel good about, but have them schedule it too, man. Like live your life. You've got the time. You can focus on other shit. You can let go of that entirely. Just film the stuff, send it over, and that's somebody else's fucking problem.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. I'm probably by the way, the 4-Hour Work Week was a game changer of a book for me too, by the way. Just, Tim, if you're listening, I'm waiting on my invite, bro.
Yeah.
But I think I've probably reached the critical mass enough that the 80-20 principle is starting to apply, where like, if I could offload the content editing piece to somebody that was really good, it would probably be worth the, 500 to $1,000 a month to have somebody just do that, a batch create my content, send it back to me. I'll spot check it and then dump it into the. Yeah, you're probably right about that. And I can actually have them do it all through my software. I use Go High Level for everything, so they can just schedule it and
Yep.
I can see the performance metrics and all that shit.
Yep. Well, now we know what you'll be doing after this.
Yep, yep. Um, After I have pork belly tacos and a non-alcoholic beer.
Of course. So we're getting close to the end of time here, and I just want to bring this back around a little bit. Where are you at today so far as coaching? We know the People Displeaser, you're going to be tagged in the bottom for people that don't. Go check him out. But
Sure.
how do you want to develop your coaching practice as you move forward? What do you want to be different?
I'm migrating my business more toward in-person events rather than online courses. I have a deep heart for people and I connect really well with them in person. So I really want that to be a big component of my business. My first live in-person course is coming out in May. It's going to be a small one. It's only 25 people or so, maybe less. I think we have room for 20, but if I have to go to 25, I can. Um, and I'm pretty excited about that. I hope that I need it to do 10 people so I can afford to pay everything for it.
Yeah.
But, that'll be the first time I ever record anything live and I'll have a camera crew and like, it'll be the real deal, like really cool stuff where they're going to edit and chop up the videos and make them clean. And, I'll have sound and like all the cool stuff. So that'll be fun. And then my one-on-one practice, I think I've got it pretty well where I want it. I'm working with the right people. My avatar is pretty clear. That executive coaching world is really great for me and it's fun and I do really well with it. Um, so I like that. I like my smaller one-on-one program, although I am going to twilight it in the name of this kind of smaller group work. So I'll have two things. Like in October, I'm launching my first seminar technically. So it'll be a $300 ticket. I'm going to try and put as many people as I can in a room and see what happens. And then, we'll have VIP tickets and all that stuff. Yeah, I think that's the shift of the practice. The easiest place to find me though is, on my socials, the People Displeaser or, the peopledispleaser.com. That's where all my free stuff is. And interestingly enough, Sean, my free stuff is as good as everybody else's paid stuff. And I just did a 5-day challenge with all of my People Pleaser crowd and people are saying like, this is the best course I've ever taken. And I've paid for courses before because I really give a shit. And I put a lot of time and energy into it. And I made the course out and I built them a community so they can talk and like, because I hear it all the time from people. It's like, you don't understand. I don't have any money. And I'm like, you don't understand. I'm doing this shit for free. Like,
Yeah.
I will give you the tools, right? The implementation, if you need me to do it, then you're going to pay me to do that. But like, I will give you everything you need to do this. And something that I find interesting as we kind of exit is that two things happen when you work with me one-on-one. Almost universally, every single person that works with me one-on-one ends up making more money. I don't know why. I really don't know why. But like, they either get a raise or they sell more stuff or like, it's just fascinating how it plays out. And then I think the most important thing you and I touched on today was your past doesn't decide your now. And the hard truth is that we are all the result of our past thoughts and actions. But the fortunate news is that means if we start thinking and acting differently, tomorrow will be totally different. So if I left your listeners with anything, it would be, don't let what's happened to you be you. You deserve more than that.
Take that one to the bank. Nick, thanks so much for coming on, man, and I'll make sure to get all of your links in the comment section below. For everybody, if you are not familiar with Nick's work, very much so go check him out. He's inspired a lot of the work that I do in Boundaries, as I said earlier, and hell of a guy, super relatable.
Thanks for having me, brother.